Hello, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Steve Marks, chair of the CMC's Board of Trustees and president of Hannah News Service here in Columbus. It's great to see you all out on our live stream today for this important forum. We are live streamed today thanks to our live stream partners, the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. We'd also like to thank those of you watching today who purchased a virtual seat. We are very grateful for this support and are able to continue live streaming services in large part because of you. Thank you. Columbus Metropolitan Club Political Series forums are brought to us today with support from Hannah News Service and the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. Please welcome Jack Irvin, Vice President of Public Policy at the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, to introduce our forum. Jack?
Thank you, Steve. Ohio Farm Bureau is proud to be a sponsor of the Columbus Metropolitan Club, and specifically related to these conversations on important topics here during this political season. So those not familiar with the district, the Ohio 15th Congressional District is located here in partially in central Ohio. The district covers the southern portion of Columbus, as well as communities west and south of the city and the college towns of Athens and Wilmington. And from a county perspective, it includes Clinton, Fairfield, Hawking, Madison, Morgan, Perry, Pickaway, and Vinton counties, as well as areas of Athens, Fayette, Franklin, and Ross counties. So obviously very, very encompassing district. We're gonna want to give as much time as possible to the candidates today. So we're gonna get right to this main event. So please welcome our two candidates here today, Congressman Steve Stivers. Again, this is for the Ohio 15th Congressional District. And also candidate for Ohio's 15th Congressional District is Joel Newby. Mr. Stivers is the Republican candidate and Mr. Newby is the Democrat candidate. And our host today, News Content Director at WOSU Public Media, we have Mike Thompson, and Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Jack. We'll get to the candidates in just a moment, but here are some basic rules that everyone has agreed to prior to the debate today. Of course, we want a cordial, friendly discussion of important issues. I and the candidates will do our best to make sure each candidate has equal time and an equal opportunity to answer the questions that are important to you and others in the audience. I'll ask the questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the initial question, and then we'll have time for follow-ups, say 30-second rebuttals, and also any follow-up questions that I might have. I will do my best not to interrupt, but if a candidate uses his 2 minutes to talk about something else, I will try to redirect the candidate back to the original question. Microphones will be turned off if necessary. I do not see that being a problem here today. And towards the end of this session, we will take audience questions from our real audience. Questions will arrive virtually. And we have declared this a fly-free zone, and we will do our best to keep it that way. The white tablecloths will be our judge. Anyway, Congressman Stivers, I'll start with you. We are in month number 9 of the COVID pandemic in the United States. You know the stats, 217,000 Americans have died. 5,038 people here in Ohio have died from COVID-19. How we slow the spread of this virus has been controversial from the start. Some say we should rely on personal responsibility, protect the vulnerable, but leave it to individuals to prevent the spread of the virus. Others say government, through forced business closures, mandates for masks and other things, is the way to go. Where do you come down on the best way to combat this public health crisis?
Mike, thank you for the question. I want to thank the Columbus Metropolitan Club for holding this important forum, because voters deserve to know where we stand on the issues. COVID-19 has been a challenge for the United States. This is the first pandemic in 102 years. And so as a result, we had to learn a lot of new things again. And I think the real answer is somewhere in between those two extremes. I'd like to see us encourage everybody to wear a mask. I wear a mask. I think people should wear a mask. They should social distance. I'd like to see the CDC come up with a more national framework. The other interesting and problematic thing, Mike, was that we saw differences between the states. So in Ohio, For example, construction was considered an essential service, and in Michigan it was not. For interstate commerce, I think we really need a national framework. We need a national framework similar to like snow emergencies that, level 1 might be you end up having, social distancing and wearing masks. You also have to account for the differences between Morgan County that I represent and Franklin County, which Morgan County has never been below the lowest level of on COVID-19 because they automatically social distance. It's a more rural community. But I'd like to see a national framework that includes, again, hopefully something simpler than Ohio's plan, maybe like 3 levels. People can understand 3 levels. At the 3rd level, maybe it does include closing some things temporarily, but hopefully that's for a shorter period of time, and then we use other measures to get back to real normal life, including immediate testing. We need to use immediate testing to do things. At level 2, maybe you cancel bigger events like this or other big events, and at level 1, you do use the social distancing and things like that. So I think it is a mix of the two. I'd like to see a more national framework than we have today for consistency between the states.
All right. Mr. Newby.
Thank you, Mike, and to the Metropolitan Club for putting this on. I think that a debate like this is very important for voters to make an informed decision. I agree, masks are important. We need to make sure that we socially distance. Those steps are necessary to conquering this virus. Though one thing that I kind of wonder why it hasn't taken place yet is all these great ideas are coming from Representative Stivers, and he currently sits in office. He has a platform that he could use. I, on the campaign trail, can say all the steps that I would want to take, but that is on the campaign trail. I don't have a legal office yet. Representative Stivers does. So I'm kind of wondering what's going on, why we're seeing a bunch of talk and no action when it comes to what he's actually doing. My focus would be on conquering the virus, making sure that we instill trust back into the federal government, the FDA, to make sure that we have a vaccine that we can use. Doctors have also stated that they want a treatment that would be capable of taking care of this virus as well. So the federal government needs to really take bold steps to make sure that we have a vaccine and a treatment moving forward, along with promoting mask wearing and social distancing, which again, Representative Stivers, there's been multiple campaign pictures of you over this past summer where you are not wearing a mask, where you are not socially distancing, but you're a leader. You're supposed to be a leader, but you're showing lack of leadership right there by not taking those steps. I have posted multiple pictures on social media showing me in a mask. I have one sitting here, you do too, but I think that it's something as a leader we have to promote. When you walk into a local store, you see a bunch of people not wearing masks. It's part of our leadership to wear them in public as much as possible.
Congressman Stivers, I'll let you respond. You mentioned that you'd like to see the federal government take a more active role in this, and it hasn't really. Would you like to see President Trump do some of the things that you said that would answer some of Mr. Newby's concerns?
I'm working with, to his point, number one, I'm proud of the 3 aid packages that I've supported that were bipartisan, that made it through Congress, that are helping people through this effort. I have been focused on and pushing Operation Warp Speed that started with 7 vaccines. We're now down to 5. We've had vaccines that didn't meet the safety requirements. That's a good thing. It shows that our safety protocols are working. At some point, we will have a vaccine. We already have antivirals. That's something I've been working on and that have been in the packages. And, as far as my opponent attacking me on, there's one example that he has a picture of me not wearing a mask at the Pickaway County Fair in June. It was before Pickaway County had a mask mandate, and I did wear a mask for most of the visit at the Pickaway County Fair. I did take it off for a picture with one person. My opponent's been circulating that picture. I shouldn't have taken that off, and that was in June. I've certainly tried to, lead by example since then, and I do lead by example.
Can I follow up on the politicization of the masks? You wear a mask here today. You were wearing a mask when I walked in, as was everyone else in this room. And we're fewer than 10 people, so we're compliant with all the guidelines. But Your House website, Congressman, says under the COVID-19 advice, it says in bold letters, in bold red letters, if you are not sick, you do not need to wear a face mask. Given the events of the past few weeks, do you stand by that advice?
I didn't know that that was on my site. That's probably old advice. The CDC has gone back and forth on mask wearing as well, and so I believe people that are not sick should wear a mask. I believe it's protecting each other. I'll get that fixed on my website. There has been, evolving information on it, and obviously we didn't keep our website updated. I certainly apologize for that.
But why was it red and bold? Was there any politics
I
involved
don't
with
personally
that?
update my own website, but I will get it fixed because I do believe in mask wearing.
Democrats and liberals, most of the politicization of masks has been on the right. But Democrats don't come away unscathed. In May, late May and early June, there were thousands of people protesting in the streets after the death of George Floyd, protesting for social justice and police changes. Many wore masks, but they certainly were not doing social distancing. Democrats did not criticize them as much as they criticize supporters of President Trump who show up at events not social distancing and not wearing masks. Is that a bit of a double standard on liberals and progressives' standpoint?
No, I really don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so, when those protesters were taking to the streets, they were trying to accomplish what we all want in this nation, is to have equality under the law. And so they were protesting, using their First Amendment right to achieve that. What you saw from the right, for example, the protest down at the State House where you saw people maskless beating on the State House window, they were protesting not wearing a mask at all in any location. I would say that those protesters downtown should have wore a mask, of course. I don't know how much social distancing could be done in such a small area with that large number of people. I definitely would have promoted that. And if you look back at my social media posts, we consistently said, wear a mask, social distance throughout this entire thing. I will say that on my website, I approve everything that's on there, so you don't ever see anything that's on my website that it doesn't come from me. But I think there's a difference. One side was protesting to get constitutional rights for everybody, the American dream, really, and the other side was just not wanting to wear a mask because they didn't want to.
But you could argue the folks who are at a Trump rally, they're exercising their First Amendment rights. They're expressing their views in support of President Trump. They disagree with the folks who were protesting in May and June, but it's still protesting their political views.
Yeah, I would
Double
still.
standard, Mike.
No, I would still say that the protesters should wear a mask and social distance, which would be consistent with what we were saying throughout the entire thing. I will say I wasn't one of the protesters downtown protesting without a mask on, so I don't know how that would be a double standard for me.
All right, let's move on to health care, another crucial decision that faces the country right now. The Supreme Court soon will hear a case that could overturn the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Congressman Stivers, if that happens, what is your plan to ensure people with pre-existing conditions can get accessible and affordable health care?
Sure. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill that would ensure that people with pre-existing conditions can get coverage, affordable coverage, no matter what. But frankly, moving forward on healthcare, the things that I think we need to do are change the fundamentals of healthcare. In healthcare, it's one of the only things you buy that nobody knows what anything costs. Nobody really cares what anything costs because the out-of-pocket for them is the same, and nobody shops on price and quality. So I think we need to make those changes to make it work, but we need to cover people with pre-existing condition because that could be any of us. I have a daughter, Mike, with a pre-existing condition, so I know what it's like to have a pre-existing condition. The other thing on healthcare I'd like to quickly mention is we need to make drugs more affordable. If you look at the European Union and Europe, it costs about $1 billion to bring a drug to market. In the United States, it costs $3 billion. What's the big difference? Well, in Europe, they sit around a conference table with the people that want to get a drug passed and the equivalent of the FDA, and here we speak through our lawyers. So it costs 3 times as more, it takes twice as long in the United States. That could pass on drugs that are 66% cheaper in the United States through that one change that's pretty simple and not controversial. So I think there are things that we can do. I'm also the lead sponsor of a bill called the RAISE Act that will increase the amount of money people can put in a flexible spending account and allow it to roll over at the end of the year. That bill's passed the House twice, once under Republicans, once under Democrats, and we're hopeful we can get it through the Senate to make that happen. Because one of the big crises in healthcare today, Mike, is a lot of people have an insurance card, but they can't afford to go to the doctor because they can't afford the out-of-pocket cost. So that's a bill that Republicans and Democrats can agree on. We've been fighting on healthcare so long, it's time to come together and do things we can agree on. That's my bill and something that's passed the House, and we need to get finished in the Senate.
Mr. Newby, you say you support Medicare for all. You do not support Medicare for all, excuse me. You say you do not support Medicare for all, but you do support a single-payer health care system. Are they not the same thing, and could you clarify where you stand on what kind of health insurance and health care system we should have?
Yeah, so Medicare for All is really what they want to do is just expand the current Medicare program the way that it currently sits. A single-payer system would advocate for the government to pay for the general procedures and so on and so forth. But the difference is that I look at the Medicare system, how it currently stands, and I see all the holes in them. We used to talk about donut holes and so on and so forth, and how medications are paid differently. So I'm for a system where we can just, I'm more of a, instead of trying to fix up the broken truck, let's just go ahead and get a new truck that will actually be functioning. It was interesting that Representative Stivers brought up price controls in Europe. Well, one of the best things that's going in Europe's favor is that they cut out insurance industries by advocating for single-payer systems across the board or across Europe. So that's on their side. But, I apologize, I kind of started to laugh when he brought up price controls and being able to see what's going on in the pricing system. This is what he said in 2018. And yet there's still nothing done on the situation coming from Representative Stivers. So I think what we're really seeing is a lack of leadership when it comes to this issue. I would advocate very, very hard for a single-payer system, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm either going to have Donald Trump or Joe Biden. That's it. And neither of them have advocated for a single-payer system. So I know that my job needs to be to get the ACA to where it needs to be, which means making sure that we do protect pre-existing conditions, because COVID-19 is probably going to be considered a pre-existing condition given what we're seeing coming out of the cardio aspect of COVID-19. So we really need to protect those pre-existing conditions. And I'm all for protecting the ACA and making it better. I understand what my dream is of a single-payer system, but I look at the reality. I'm going to have either one of two presidents that neither of them want that system, so it's the ACA for me.
Mike, I'd like to quickly address that. A single-payer system will kick 180 million Americans off of their private insurance that they like. That it will also raise cost. And it will increase the size and scope of the federal government. I'm not sure why my opponent thinks I'm for price controls. I'm for price transparency and regulatory reform. When I talked about FDA reform, that's the process through which we approve drugs. It doesn't involve price controls. It involves transparency on price. I think people should know what something costs, and we need to encourage people to shop on price and quality. I don't want to take away choices. My opponent does.
Mr. Newby.
I'm sorry. I misspoke. It is the price transparency, but it remains the same. In 2018, this is what he advocated for, and yet we have no progress on that. And you don't need private insurance if the insurance is coming from the government, just like you. Yeah.
Can we talk about what happened in Europe when they did socialized medicine? Rich people can buy private insurance, concierge medicine and things like that, and poor people die waiting in line.
No, they don't. That's factually wrong.
Congressman Stivers, to the point of Republicans having a plan to replace Obamacare after it's been repealed, there is no real plan. There's wishes that we want to continue coverage for pre-existing conditions and have better transparency on prescription drugs and healthcare services, but there is no concrete plan. Why is that?
Well, there's no single plan. I think a lot of folks have individual plans. We're working together to come up with a consensus. It has to be Republicans and Democrats who come together that really make this happen. Today, the Senate is controlled by Republicans. The House is controlled by Democrats, and we have a Republican in the White House. We probably will not have one party controlling everything after this election either. And so Republicans and Democrats have to come together to figure out how to move forward on health care. And that's something I have a record of doing. I was ranked by the Lugar Institute as the 11th most bipartisan member of Congress because I work with my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, to get things done. That's what I think the people of this district want, is people who will come together and work together to get things done and get results. I've gotten 21 things signed into law that matter. Some of them have been done with bills with my name on it. My opponent likes to say I've only passed five bills with my name on it, but then I've rolled other bills into somebody else's bill to get it done, or I've gotten it done through regulation, like Marcia Fudge and I fixed the school lunch program by getting the U.S. Department of Agriculture to agree to fix it, and I actually got the Tomb of Remembrance at Arlington Cemetery because I got them to agree to do it, even though I introduced the bill. They decided to do it before it passed the Senate and just make it happen. So there's lots of ways to get things done, but we got to come together as Republicans.
Mr. Newby, I
Democrats
want to get to Congressman Stivers' contention. If we go to a single-payer healthcare system, or Medicare for all, whatever we want to call it, people will lose their private health insurance, which those of us who are fortunate to have good private health insurance like it. It's not perfect, but we like it. Don't those folks, might they get something that's worse than what they have now?
I kind of argue against the question here. Is it that you like the insurance or you like your doctor? Because I think most people say that they like their doctor. In fact, I think the majority of people would like to say that they would like to choose their doctor. In fact, right now, the way that the system is set up, the insurance company chooses your doctor for you. Because it's either you have an insurance company that tells you to go to these doctors over here, but you can't go to these doctors, even though they might have the best facilities and the best medical care. With a single payer system, you get to pick what doctors you want to go to, what hospital you want to go to. I like to give the example. There are two major hospitals near where I live. The one that's closest, outside of most insurance plans that I would be able to take advantage of. So I would have to go to the one further away, and quite frankly, the one that I wouldn't want to go to. So a single payer system actually opens up opportunities for you to pick your doctor, for you to decide what facility you want to go to. But I go back. I'm either going to have Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And if it's Joe Biden, it's going to have to be, how do we improve the ACA? That means making sure that pre-existing conditions are continuously covered. Representative Stivers has voted against health care in this country over 100 times. In fact, there is an ACA expansion on the table that he voted against in June, in the middle of a global pandemic. So I think, I'm sorry.
No, I think we've covered it. I want to get on to other things. We only have about a half hour left here. Taxes and spending, Mr. Newby. Let's talk about the Trump tax cuts. They've been criticized pretty heavily. But before the pandemic, let's put the pandemic aside for just a moment, if we can, because that was an extraordinary event, okay? But we'll try to put it aside. Before the pandemic, those tax cuts sent the stock market soaring to record levels. Those of us with 401ks saw the benefits. Unemployment hit historically low levels. Wages increased 3.2%, more than they had in some time. Didn't the tax cuts make our economy stronger and our lives a little more financially secure?
Did the tax cuts make the economy stronger or just appear stronger? Because what really happened in this state in 2019 was one of the worst times for Ohio job growth. That's just basic fact of 2019. That was before the pandemic. But I understand where you're trying to come from. There was a pandemic, and by weakening the funds that our federal government was able to take advantage of by not taxing the wealthy and making them pay their fair share, it actually puts us in a weaker spot to deal with large pandemics like this. And I'm going to be honest with you, with our new global economy that we're in, we're going to have more potential for pandemics, more potential for global crises that are going to affect us here at home. So we need to be able to have some cash in the reserves. And the best way to do that is making the rich pay their fair share. I'm happy that some very wealthy people like the owner of Amazon is able to make more money during the pandemic than anybody else, but that's not the typical case. We have to plan for those things. And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to tax policy, we have to imagine the world that we want to live in. We want people to pay for things that they were able to take advantage of. I like to think how I was raised back home in Pickaway County was once you get ahead, you reach back and pull the next person up. But if you're just making a lot of money and then you're not willing to pay the taxes that go to roads, bridges, schools, the things that we need to succeed as a country, then you're not reaching back to pull the next person up. You're putting a stiff arm to their forehead and keeping them down. That tax cut increased wage inequality. It might have been good for the people at the top, but that's not good for the people where I'm from.
Congressman Stivers, in 2017, we'll talk again about the before times, if we could.
I'd love to address that.
But
Okay.
let me just leave you off with this question. In 2017, you predicted that President Trump's tax cuts would reduce the deficit, quote, a bit. The last year of President Obama's presidency, the national deficit was at $585 billion. In 2018, before the pandemic, President Trump's second term in office, the deficit nearly doubled to $984 billion. Yep. Again, before the pandemic, before the economic shutdown, the deficit doubled. Did these tax cuts work?
They did work, and you explained how they worked. They had unemployment at 3.5% nationally, wage growth 3.2%, economic growth almost 4%, and it would have cut the deficit if it would have had time to continue to grow the economy. Instead, the pandemic hit and we shut down the economy in order to protect people. My opponent says that Ohio, unemployment went up in Ohio. The facts are in 2019, from January to December, unemployment went from 4.3% to 4.1%. That's down. More people were employed, wages were growing, and wages were growing faster for people at the lower economic end of the scale than the higher economic end of the scale. If the tax cuts would have had time, they would have actually grown revenues by growing the economy. There's three ways to address the deficit. One is to cut spending, one is to increase taxes, and the third is to grow the pie, grow the economy. That's what tax reform was about, is growing the pie. It just didn't have enough time to work.
Follow up, but in that first year, with that booming economy that you just described, the deficit doubled. Would it have at least stayed flat?
No, it takes time. So the math is it takes time for that to work. The economy is going to have to keep growing to make that happen. And it grows, based on the amount it grew the first year is the base for the next year. So it grows a little more. But it takes a couple, 3 years for that to really make a difference because you're starting with a deficit and you're starting with reducing the amount of money that comes in, but you're growing the pie that it's coming in on. So ultimately it would have worked, but it didn't have time to work.
Mr. Newby.
He gave that 3 different way speech in 2018 as well. It's still not true because economists even said that to make up for the deficit that you're speaking about, we would have had tremendous economic growth, someplace near like 4 or 5%, which is not typical of industrialized economy at all. A good industrialized economy is somewhere around 3%, but that's beside the point. What we really need to think about is Representative Stivers stands for a tax plan where you cut taxes for the wealthy and hopefully us at the bottom are able to get a job. What I stand for is taxing the people at the top and then using that tax money to provide better roads, affordable access to internet, and to make sure that we improve schooling so that way we can, at the bottom, provide our own opportunities.
Let's talk about climate change.
Okay, I really like quickly
30 seconds,
to
please.
announce the fact, or to say that wages were growing faster for lower income folks than they were for higher income folks
Because
after the
the
tax
structure of Obama
reform.
put in place.
So it was working for everyone up and down the wage scale.
All right, let's turn to climate change. You look at the strength of the hurricanes that have hit the Gulf Coast this summer and fall, the number and intensity of wildfires out west. We have seen the possible effects of climate change and how it's dealing with our daily lives for some of us here in the country. Mr. Newby, you say America should be running entirely on clean energy by 2050. That's just 30 years from now. Could you define what clean energy is, first of all, and then how you plan to reach that goal?
Thank you. So climate change is the issue of our generation, and if we have to deal with it. In fact, the United States military deems it as the #1 national security threat to the United States. So what I deem as clean energy would be making sure that we're not using fossil fuels or fuel sources that just, once we use them up, they're done, they're in the atmosphere, they're affecting our climate at that point. I'm focused on solar energy farms. In fact, District 15 is a great place to expand solar farms here. In the state of Ohio, because we do have access to large fields that could actually take in that kind of development, we're seeing proposals in Madison and Pickaway County that I would help to foster and expand on those. But we're also talking about the possibilities of wind energy. But it's a movement from pulling something out of the ground and burning, whether that be coal or natural gas, to moving to a system where we are constantly able to use that system without putting more stuff into the environment.
Would clean energy include nuclear?
No, because what happens after you finish up with the nuclear waste, where do you put it? Eventually, hopefully, we can come with some sort of technology, and at that point, maybe we can have a different conversation. But what do you do with the spent nuclear waste? You have to put it somewhere, and it's not going to disappear over 10, 20 years. That's thousands of years.
And to clarify, you think we should be done with coal by 2050?
Yes.
And natural gas, he said.
Mr. Stivers, Congressman Stivers.
The ludicrousness of what he just said is that Southeast Ohio is in the middle of an energy revolution, a clean energy revolution. The Utica shale of natural gas and the change of our power plants to natural gas has resulted in America exceeding the output under the Kyoto protocols for fossil fuel or for greenhouse gases. So we've actually reduced our emissions more than any country in the world, and it's been as a result of natural gas that he wants to do away with immediately. We have 150 years of cleaning burning natural gas. I believe in climate change. I'm a member of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, the only bipartisan group on it. But I think natural gas is an important bridging technology. We should continue to invest in battery technology so the wind and solar that Joel talks about could actually be used when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. That's really important long term. But the Green New Deal that he is for would cost every Ohioan $65,000. And he actually has said the Green New Deal doesn't go far enough, so maybe he's not for the Green New Deal, but he's for something that would cost $65,000 and kill 100,000 Ohio jobs immediately, especially in Southeast Ohio where we have gas pipelines and things like that. So what we should do going forward, in my opinion, is invest in battery technology and focus on negative emissions technologies. You might say, what is negative emissions technologies? Well, it's in its simplest forms, it's nature, it's trees, but there's obviously mechanical negative emissions technologies that we need to focus on too. We need to work with Brazil to get them to stop tearing down the rainforest. We need to plant 1 trillion trees, and we need to work on mechanical negative emissions technology. We need to follow nature. Nature doesn't look at one side of the equation and say go to zero. Nature's about a balance, and so we need to balance things out with negative emissions technology while we reduce our emissions, and then ultimately move toward cleaner technology over time when it's available, not some artificial number that of 2030 that's unachievable, 2050 that's unachievable.
Yeah.
Mr. Newby, quick, where do you stand on the Green New Deal? And secondly, should we do away with fracking and natural gas extraction by 2050?
Well, first of all, he said, I want to get rid of natural gas immediately. That's false. You said 2050. Clearly, that's not immediately. Where I stand on the Green New Deal, the Green New Deal was something that was proposed as a House resolution, which would not have been binding, so therefore could not have killed jobs, and it wouldn't have been law. So I don't know what that's about. The Green New Deal were standards that we would set for ourselves and where we want to go. We're past that. It's time for action. If we don't take action in the next 10 years, then we're not going to be able to have a debate about it anymore. We're going to be experiencing the real life consequences. So the Green New Deal, no, I'm not for the Green New Deal because it's just aspirational. What I'm for is actual solutions, which means making sure that we are providing funding so we can build out our solar plants, make sure that we could actually improve battery technology. If he wanted battery technology so badly and improve upon it, he should write a bill. He has the power to do so. He lacks the leadership of doing it. So I have a vision for the future because I hate to be kind of morbid here, but I'm going to live longer than him, hopefully, right? That would be the kind of expectations of how life goes. I have a vested interest in making sure that I have a world that I can breathe in, that my children and my grandchildren can breathe in. And I understand that he's going to come back with, he wants a world that his children can live in, but his actions are not proving that. He has the power and he doesn't do anything. This is where people like me, where we're from Pickaway County, and we just want a better tomorrow, and we see no action coming from Washington, D.C. My people are being left behind, and he's allowing it to happen.
Mike,
I'll give
I'd
you
like
30
to
seconds,
address
please.
that quickly. So we have invested $100 million in battery technology. We've done it. It's happening right now. And he wants to say that the Green New Deal it's just policies, and that couldn't kill jobs. Those policies will kill 100,000 Ohio jobs on day one. That's what I said would happen on day one, is killing the jobs.
All right, let's get to social justice and the problem of racism, which continues to plague our region, our state, and our country. Congressman Stivers, how do you define systemic racism? Do you think it exists? And if so, what can Congress do to eliminate it?
Mike, I do think systemic racism exists, and it's just policies that ultimately don't allow for everybody to achieve the American dream. And, police reform is part of what we need to do, but there's a lot of economic reform we need to do as well. I've been working with Lacey Clay and Emmanuel Cleaver since the George Floyd issue. They're two congressmen from Missouri and Kansas City that we're working on improving minority home ownership. That's an important piece of the puzzle as well, because if everybody can't achieve the American dream, then the freedoms don't mean as much. And I support the Justice Act, which is Tim Scott's bill that would do a bunch of police reform, including banning chokeholds, including getting de-escalation training out there, including making sure that we have a forum for information about no-knock warrants and abuse of force. I believe we need to add provisions into it so the Department of Justice gets information about multiple allegations of the use of force. The police officer that killed George Floyd had multiple allegations of use of force, and so we need to get that information to others so they can take action. So I'm for both economic reform and I'm for police reform. The irony is my opponent wouldn't even sit down with the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police organization in the country, to talk about stuff. I sat down with him. He had a letter sent from his party saying that he wouldn't even sit down with them. You can't solve problems if you won't sit down with people.
Mr. Newby.
Well, I am an attorney, and I've spent plenty of time down at the courthouse. I've seen real-world implications of this. So when I launched my campaign, there was policy in place that really accounted for multiple issues along this line, including making sure that we have some sort of bail reform, making sure that we have affordable housing. All of that was on my platform. And then George Floyd happened, and at that point, Representative Stivers took 4 days to respond to the incident. What I did was I listened to the Black community, and I expanded on the parts of my platform where I possibly could. When it comes to sitting down and having a conversation, I think what is really missing there is the hard line that the order took against any changes. A great example of where that didn't take place is in Athens, where many aspects of my proposal actually went into place, and they actually did a review and submitted their findings to the council, and they're going to make real-world changes. The problem is that any proposal of this is stopped. It's It's stopped at the door when it comes to the fraternal order. Now, I will also say this. I didn't take that meeting because they were going to endorse Representative Stivers because they don't endorse Democrats. And I think that it's more productive to talk to the people and find out what they want instead of finding out what the opinions of the people that are doing, the protecting of harmful individuals.
Let me ask you, Mr. Newby, a follow-up. Supporters of the term defund the police say it runs the gamut. It's everywhere from abolishing the police to taking away some money from police and putting that money towards social service programs. Where do you stand on the scale of defunding the police?
Yeah, but you hit it right on the head, is that it's all over the place, right? Because I've seen the results downtown, I want to put more money towards actual drug reform. So I kind of want to see less policing of that and more of a mental health aspect of making sure that we get the reforms going on. Speaking of mental health, a lot of the people that I would see down at the courthouse, it would be a mental health problem. So we would have to get people in there that would be trained in those fields to really take care of the issue and suggest to the judge an appropriate method of handling the situation. So I would prefer to see more funding going to those areas. I think that protecting our citizens is paramount. I have multiple family members that are cops, and they do a fantastic job. Matter of fact, some of the best constitutional arguments that I get into is with those family members. And I think that, we can have a robust police that actually do peacekeeping while improving so that way we're taking care of our drug and mental health problem more effectively.
Congressman Stivers, real quick, and we'll get to the audience questions, but do you sympathize with the frustration of the folks who want to defund the police? They've been frustrated by a lack of reforms, which you listed some of them previously. Should there be something more of a hammer, a cudgel, to force those reforms? And is defunding the police the way to do it?
Well, I don't think defunding the police is the way to do it, but I sympathize with the frustrations that people have that they don't think their voices are being heard. I've sat down with leaders in the black community, I've sat down with police, I've sat down with community leaders to talk about these issues, and I think we will be able to come together on some things. I think Tim Scott's bill will pass after the election. I think it became a political football, and that's unfortunate, but it was an election year, and those things sometimes happen. But I do feel like the people who are frustrated that their voices aren't being heard, need to be heard. I've sat down with leaders in our community, Shannon Harden and others, that are trying to do some things at City Hall. I don't agree with getting rid of police helicopters. They ultimately didn't do that because they do a lot more stuff as far as finding missing individuals and stuff that's not really a problem, in fact, is helpful. So I think I understand the frustration. I hope we can target it a little more toward getting people the help they need. And I do agree with Joel. We have a mental health crisis in this country, and I feel sorry for our police who are put in a really difficult situation every day when they are sent out to deal with every societal failing we have, whether it's domestic violence, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, or whether it is mental health problems. These are folks trying to solve every societal ill because we put them in that situation. We need to give them the tools they need, the de-escalation training and other things that I talked about. So I'm hopeful we can get to the answer.
I want to get to our audience questions.
Thanks.
It is our
Thanks,
tradition at the Columbus Metropolitan Club to take questions from the audience. Of course, our audience is not here because of the social distancing, and we have taken questions beforehand, and we have curated them for fairness and redundancy, and we'll turn it over to Jan.
Well, thank you. We did have more than 25 questions that came in online before the forum. Many of the topics you have already covered, so I'm going to skip those questions. I'm going to try to hit the questions quickly of folks that are different that you haven't talked about. The Ohio 15th District is very diverse. It makes it difficult to serve a wide variety of constituents. Given the range in business, economic, educational, health, delivery, et cetera, how will you work to overcome that situation and guarantee a more accurate and a complete level of care and service to your constituents regardless of the geography and the diversity?
Mr. Newby, let's start with you. If we can keep these to a minute, then we can get to as many as we can.
Well, I think that it really starts with the fact that I'm from this district. I was raised in Pickaway County, educated in Athens. I have family, friends all over this district. I have lived and worked all over this district. So I have an appreciation for what people from each different region, if you allow me to say that, like Appalachia and the farm fields and the big cities. So I have an appreciation for all the differences, have lived those experiences. So I would be able to understand those experiences and be able to understand that there's multiple different ways that I need to approach even a single topic in order to appropriately represent each different aspect of this district.
Congressman Stivers.
Thanks. I've lived the entire experience of the 15th District. I grew up in a rural area in Ripley, Ohio, have lived in the suburbs now for 12 years, but lived in the city of Columbus for 19 years before that. So I understand the people and the differences. I work hard to get out in every part of this district, whether it's going to Morgan County, or the city of Columbus. The Arena District just down the street is in our district. So it is very diverse. It sometimes makes it hard to make everybody happy, but I work hard to listen to everybody, and then I do what I think is right. And and people can hold me accountable for what I do, but I try to listen to everybody, and I do what I think is right.
Next question.
Yes, it's a long question, but the bottom line is, are you ever consider a minimum income for people to stabilize their financial existence and ability to care for themselves independently? And this is about folks who are really challenged to increase their income because of disabilities, elderly, childcare, the multiple social issues.
Is this a universal basic income? Is that what they're basically
Would
asking
you
for?
ever consider a minimum income for these people to stabilize their financial existence and ability to care for themselves independently?
Okay. Congressman Stivers.
Thanks. Well, I'm not sure I completely understand the question. I'll answer
sure I do
it sort of in terms of minimum wage. And then another thing that I think is really important. I do think it's time to raise the minimum wage, but I don't want to raise it too fast because I think that does kill jobs. So I'd like to see it's indexed at the state level. I'd like to see the minimum wage indexed in the federal code, which it is not today. But the other thing that's really important to me is getting rid of the benefit cliffs. So right now, if you are on social welfare programs, benefits, you end up making $1 too much and you lose everything. I'd like to see that become a ramp so we can encourage self-sufficiency, build self-sufficiency. As you make a little more, you pay a little more, but you don't lose everything at once. What we're doing right now is discouraging people from actually taking that next step, and we need to encourage it. So we've been working to try to reform those programs. We had some bills passed last year. Republicans and Democrats voted for them. We need to continue that, though. It's been a little stalled with the pandemic, but it's time to get back to that very important work.
Quick follow-up, Congressman, do you have a number? What should be a living minimum wage right now? Many companies have chosen the number $15 an hour.
I don't know that we can take the minimum wage to $15 an hour immediately, but most people aren't living on minimum wage. The other thing, I prefer to call it a starter wage as opposed to the minimum wage, because what I want to do is help people get more skills and grow their skills and grow their salary at the same time. If you're 50 years old and have a family of 4, you shouldn't be on the starter wage anymore. We need to get you new skills and move you up the line that way, not at the starter wage, the same as a 14-year-old that enters the workforce.
Mr. Newby, give you a minute and a half.
I mean, this was a different direction than what I thought the question was going to go, because it was a,
Maybe you understand the question better than I do.
it's a discussion about elderly and people that maybe not necessarily capable of taking on a job that would even pay the minimum wage, whatever it would be. Really what we need to focus in on there is Social Security paying exactly what it needs to, and I think that we need to increase who pays for that. I believe that's something that you've already said in 2018 as well. But we do need to increase that, but we also need to increase what that you can take in order to subsidize that. Between my great-grandparents when they were on Social Security, and I have family members that have mental health problems that rely quite heavily on Social Security because they can't go out and get those jobs. We do need to raise it so that way we can have a minimum level, especially in areas where the District 15, unproportionately, in my opinion, has a higher rate of mental health that we need to take care of, and that's why I've proposed multiple programs to, accomplish that goal. But so we really do need to worry what that makes the economy look like. Just providing enough jobs is never going to be enough.
But just aside from folks who perhaps unable to work, folks who are unable to work because they can't find a job, maybe their job has been eliminated through automation, through outsourcing. Do you support a universal basic income? And do you support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
My buddy Dave has this great saying that says that the states are laboratories of democracy. We've seen a few programs about universal basic income being pretty successful. I'm not quite sure I'm to the point where I want to expand that. I would love to see more opportunities throughout the states of really taking advantage of a program like that, see if it's possible, because Andrew Yang is right. Automation is going to be a large portion of what we're going for. And to answer the short, $15 minimum wage, absolutely. Mostly because it's becoming increasingly difficult to live on that $15 minimum wage. And trust me, I have no kids, and I'm trying to do it.
Next question from the audience.
Yes, and I apologize if I didn't represent that question well.
I may have misunderstood it. Thanks for
Yeah,
helping clarify, Joel.
This question is specific to each of you. Mr. Newby, what is your position on the timing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Supreme Court replacement? And Mr. Stivers, same question to you, but if you support a Trump appointment, how do you justify your change from 2016 when you believe the people should choose the president and the president should choose the justice, denying Obama his appointment?
Mr. Newby, we'll start with you.
So I do believe that the president should be completely in power from noon on January 20th to noon January 20th of their first year, well, 11:59, right? But the problem is that the Republicans in the Senate set a standard during Obama's term, and we can say who's in power and who's not in power, but the simple fact of the matter is that they determined that the Constitution at that point said, oh, you only get to do this, and it was just a raw political move. I think that's wrong. So I do think that we should delay this nominee, mostly because I think that's the fairness aspect that's here. If we want to go with raw political power, then that's just a vicious way of doing politics, and I completely disagree with that. And I believe that if you're going to come out here and say that you're for bipartisanship and civility, then you have to agree that that raw political power should not be executed at this point.
Congressman Stivers.
Sure, and by the way, in 2016, I did not make a statement either way on the filling the vacancy, and I feel the same way today. It doesn't matter what Joel thinks or what I think. Article 1 of the Constitution is pretty clear. The Senate is the one that advises and consents, not the House. The real question for us is, would we support packing the Supreme Court? I'm opposed to packing the Supreme Court. It's a dangerous precedent, and I think Joel should answer that question too. It's the more important question here.
Do you support adding Supreme Court justices to tilt it more towards Democrats?
No, because we would have to add 4. Then if we add 4, they're going to add 2. Then we're going to add 2. And then it's going to be a kangaroo court before you know it. We need to look at actual structural changes, but that would take a constitutional amendment. And right now, we're not unified in this country. And I think that I would be a better unifier when it comes to that to help pass a constitutional amendment. I'm thinking maybe 18-year term limits. That's something that's been kicked around. And I would like to explore those ideas. But until we bring the country together, a constitutional amendment's not possible.
Mr. Newby, Congressman Stivers. Mission
Thanks.
accomplished, civil debate, no flies.
Hey,
very
thanks
much.
for having us.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you.
Great. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. Obviously, these are very important for the candidates to air their ideas and thoughts on today's issues, and so hopefully it was informative for you. We need to thank our series sponsors, political series sponsors, Hannah News and Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and of course, let's thank our speakers, Steve Stivers, Joel Newby, and Mike Thompson. And our special thanks to all of you. We look forward to seeing you here at CMC next week, and have a great week.